This morning, we're pleased to have Reverend Walter Brown with us again. Walter has come and spoken to us for many years. I don't even know how many, at least 5 or more. And we're thrilled that he's a voice from our community. He's a pastor in the area, and we're looking forward to hearing the word of the Lord through you, Walter, this morning. Welcome.
Amen. How's everybody this morning? I have to admit that I was feeling pretty good, and then in the psalm it said that the length of your days are 70 years, and I turned 69 this year. That means I don't have a long time. I'm honored always to come and stand before you. The first thing that jumps out at me is that Matthew remembers that Jesus at first simply ignores this extremely needy woman. In one of the versions, Matthew reinforces this perceived slight by Jesus. They said of him, he said, not a word. This is even before he explains to her why. So perhaps these disciples' send her away attitude is emboldened by the actions of their esteemed leader, who is, by the way, the Christ of God. This next statement is for persons who wield authority. Always remember, we command even when what we say is nonverbal. Now, what is it that we know about this Jesus? When it comes to ministry, Jesus is hardly ever speechless. Jesus burst onto the ministry history scene, and what he says is so powerful. People say things like, never has a man spoken like this before. So this not a word response doesn't seem to fit the Jesus who we know in other stories. And I've got a smiley face on my notes to look incredulous when I say that he said not a word. So perhaps Jesus is testing them. Brown wrote an article entitled Preaching, Teaching, and Counseling Values. I'm Brown. In it, he describes 3 ways Jesus instructs his disciples: the planned teaching event, the unplanned teaching event, and the planned unplanned teaching event. For these disciples in their 3-year IWS curriculum, not Institute for Worship Studies, but Institute for World Studies, these graduate level students were being tested in an unplanned teaching event. In essence, how would they deal with the situation when what is right is bracketed by what is situationally commanded? Let me say it another way. How would they respond to a real tragedy that did not touch them personally? These IWS students knew the stated rule or command. So how they would respond to a need, and a need that they would be allowed legally to walk away from. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan? The priest and the Levite who crossed over to the other side. They ignored a desperate need, but they did nothing illegal. As a matter of fact, they were following religious law. Maybe these IWS students were going to learn a law that triumphs or that trumps religious law, and that's the law of love. We were taking active shooter training on base, something that is necessary because of the times we live in, and they give you scenarios, and they say if you are fleeing the building and you see a shipmate injured in the hall, do you pass them and continue out of the building, or do you stop and help them? And remember, the shooter is on your heels. They said you stop, and this is why you stop, because love must always trump fear. The love for must always trump the fear from. Let me give you a comical story that's by one of my favorite novelist Jodi Picoult. And what Jodi does is she presents moral dilemmas in ways that prevent the reader from making quick, thoughtless decisions. It's about a young man with Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism, and a psychiatrist. And it's not my intention to offend either, but I'm quoting now. A guy is flying in a hot air balloon, and he's lost. He lowers himself over a cornfield and calls out to a woman. "Can you tell me where I am and where I'm headed?" "Sure," the woman says. "You are at 41 degrees, 2 minutes, and 14 seconds north. 144 degrees, 4 minutes, 19 seconds east. You're at an altitude of 762 meters above sea level. And right now you are hovering, but you were on a vector of 234 degrees at 12 meters per second. Amazing. Thanks. By the way, do you have Asperger's syndrome?" "I do," the woman replies. "How did you know?" "Because everything you said is true. It's much more detailed than I need, and you told me in a way that is of no use to me at all." The woman frowns and she said, "Huh?" And she said, "Are you a psychiatrist?" "I am," the man says. "But how the heck did you know?" He says, "You don't know where you are. You don't know where you're headed. You got where you're going by blowing hot air. You put labels on people after asking a few questions, and you're in exactly the same spot you were 5 minutes ago, but now somehow it's my fault." I want you to hear my heart. When we see people or have the opportunity to present Jesus, are we stuck in some kind of religious law syndrome? Do we see longitude, latitude, proximity, things that are important? But do we miss the most important thing, and that is the language of love? Or do we simply blow hot air? Listen to a song by Donnie McClurkin, and in the song, he asked God for several things. He asked God to lead. He asked God to hear our prayers. He asked God that on that day, let him say, "Well done." But it is the second request that touched my heart. He says, and I wish I could sing. I hear you all singing. I was going to try to sing it, but I'm no fool. You don't come into a group of singers and cannot sing and start singing. He says, "Give us love that's true, O Lord, trusting as a child. Love for all we see, O Lord, pure and undefiled. But to heal the heart and not turn away from anyone who is in need. All we ask is that you teach us love indeed." My friend Al would say it like this: maybe, just maybe, his confrontation with this woman of Canaan, Jesus learned something about religious law as it compares to the law of love, and the power that one has over the other. Maybe, just maybe, the teacher became the student when Jesus witnessed not just religion and faith, but religion and faith busted by love. This is my close, and I want to present it with 2 slides. How do we see Jesus? How do we present him? When Jesus gave instructions to the disciples, did he say, "You better not go over there to those other people"? Or was he the smiling Jesus and said, "Boys, you know what the law says. Be governed by it"? When people see us, what kind of Jesus do they see in us? Do they see the fierce, determined, which sometimes you have to be, or do they see the love-oriented Savior of the world. God gave Moses 10 commandments. Rabbis expanded them to 613. Jesus reduced them down to 2, underscored by one theme, and that's love. All we ask, give us love that's true, O Lord, trusting as a child. Love for all we see, O Lord, pure and undefiled. But to heal the heart and not turn away from all who are in need. All we ask is that you teach us love indeed.